Two doors from one corner, on the left hand going east, the line was broken by the entry of a court. And just at that point, a certain sinister block of building thrust forward its gable on the street. It was 2 stories high. It showed no window, nothing but a door on the lower story, and a blind forehead of discolored wall on the upper, and bore in every feature the marks of prolonged and sordid negligence. And this building looked like it had been forgotten in time. The door, which was equipped with neither bell nor knocker, was blistered and disdained. Tramps slouched into the recess and struck matches on the panels. Children kept shop upon the steps. The schoolboy had tried his knife on the moldings, and for close on a generation, no one had appeared to drive away these random visitors or to repair their ravages. So it was almost as if nobody lived there because everybody was, or not everybody, but people that were down on their luck, tramps, homeless people, would sit on the steps there because they knew, sit up. They knew that nobody was going to come and go out that door, okay, because it was neglected. Mr. Enfield and the lawyer were on the other side of the by street, but when they came abreast of the entry at this particular spot, the former lifted up his cane and he pointed at it. "Did you ever remark that door?" he asked. And when his companion had replied in the affirmative, "It is connected in my mind," added he, "with a very odd story." "Indeed," said Mr. Utterson, with a slight change of voice. "And what was that?" "Well, it was this way," returned Mr. Enfield. "I was coming home someplace at the end of the world about 3 o'clock of a black winter morning, and my way lay through a part of town where there was literally nothing to be seen but lamps, street after street, and all the folks asleep, street after street, all lighted up as if for a procession, and all as empty as a church, till at last I got into that state of mind when a man listens and begins to long for the sight of a policeman." Okay, so he's so alone, and it's in the middle of the night, and it's dark, and there's no sound anywhere, and it kind of creeps you out, you know? You kind of wish you could see a policeman. It would make you feel safer, you know? That's how he feels. All at once, I saw 2 figures. One, a little man who was stumping along eastward at a good walk, and the other, a girl of maybe 8 or 10, a little girl, who was running as hard as she was able down a cross street. Well, sir, the two ran into one another, naturally enough at the corner, and then came the horrible part of the thing. For the man trampled calmly over the child's body and left her screaming on the ground. It sounds nothing to hear, but it was hellish to see. It wasn't like a man. It was like some damned juggernaut. I gave him a view halloa, took to my heels, collared my gentleman, and brought him back to where there was already quite a group about the screaming child. Okay? So this crazy man just kind of, heading through town in kind of a stumbling, fumbling way, but he's moving fast. And he runs into this little girl. And when she falls down, he stomps on her. Literally, he stomps on her and leaves her there crying. And Mr. Enfield witnesses the whole thing. And he steps into action. He goes and grabs the guy to keep him from running off. Okay? So here we are. He was perfectly cool and made no resistance, this bad, crazy guy. But he gave me one look so ugly that it brought out the sweat on me like running. The people who had turned out were the girl's own family, and pretty soon the doctor, for whom she had been sent, put in his appearance. Well, the child was not much the worse, more frightened, according to the sawbones. They used to call doctors sawbones because they used to literally saw bones when they were doing their surgeries in the 1800s. So that was the nickname for doctors. And there, you might have supposed, would be an end to it. But there was one curious circumstance. I had taken a loathing to my gentleman at first sight. What does it mean to loathe, to take a loathing? Hate, yes, hatred. So had the child's family, which was only natural. But the doctor's case was what struck me. He was the usual cut and dry apothecary, of no particular age and color, with a strong Edinburgh accent, and about as emotional as a bagpipe. Well, sir, he was like the rest of us. Every time he looked at my prisoner, I saw that Sawbones turned sick and white at the desire to kill him. I knew what was in his mind, just as he knew what was in mine, and killing being out of the question, we did the next best thing. We told the man we could and would make such a scandal out of this as should make his name stink from one end of London to the other. If he had any friends or any credit, we undertook that he should lose them. And all the time, as we were pitching it in red hot, we were keeping the women off him as best we could, for they were as wild as harpies. I never saw a circle of such hateful faces. And there was the man in the middle, with a kind of black, sneering coolness. Frightened, too, I could see that. But carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. If you choose to make capital out of this accident, said he, and the evil man is the one talking, I'm naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene, says he. Name your figure. Well, we screwed him up to £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to stick out, but there was something about the lot of us that meant mischief, and at last he struck. So he blackmailed them. He said, if you'll just not report this, I'll give you any sum of money. Just name it. I'll pay you. Okay. Well, they talked him into paying them £100. They said, if you'll pay us £100 or pay it to this family, then we won't turn you in. So the next thing was to get the money. And where do you think he carried us? But to that place with the door. He whipped out a key and went in, and presently came back with the matter of £10 in gold and a check for the balance on Cots, and that's the name of the bank. Drawn payable to bearer and signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points in my story, but it was a name at least very well known and often printed. So he's keeping this from us. We don't know who the check was written by. Okay, so that's mystery number one. Who wrote the check? The figure was stiff, but the signature was good for more than that, if it was only genuine. I took the liberty of pointing out to my gentleman that the whole business looked apocryphal, and that a man does not, in real life, walk into a cellar door at 4 a.m. and come out with another man's check for close upon £100. But he was quite easy and sneering. Set your mind at rest, says he. I will stay with you till the bank's open and cash the check myself. So we all set off, the doctor and the child's father and our friend and myself, and passed the rest of the night in my chambers. The next day, when we had breakfasted, went in a body to the bank. I gave in the check myself and said I had every reason to believe it was forgery. Not a bit of it. The check was genuine. Tut tut, said Mr. Utterson. I see you feel as I do, said Mr. Enfield. Yes, it's a bad story, for my man was a fellow that nobody could have to do with, a really damnable man. And the person that drew the check is the very pink of the proprieties, celebrated too. And what makes it worse, he's one of your fellas who do what they call good. Blackmail, I suppose. An honest man paying through the nose for some of the capers of his youth. Blackmail house is what I call that place with the door, in consequence. Though even that, is far from explaining all, he added, and with the words fell into a vein of musing. From this, he was recalled by Mr. Utterson asking rather suddenly, and you don't know if the drawer of the check lives there? A likely place, isn't it? Returned Mr. Enfield. But I happen to have noticed his address. He lives in some square or other. And you never asked about the place with the door? Said Mr. Utterson. No, sir, I had a delicacy, was the reply. I feel very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of the style of the Day of Judgment. You start a question and it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly at the top of a hill and away the stone goes, starting others. And presently some bland old bird, the last you would have thought of, is knocked on the head in his own back garden, and the family has to change their name. No, sir, I make it a rule of mine. The more it looks like Queer Street, the less I ask. So remember, he didn't want to ask a lot of questions to that evil man, the bad guy. He felt like it's better not to ask a lot of questions. And remember, when he refers to Queer Street, queer doesn't mean what it means now. It meant unusual. It meant odd and strange. It doesn't have the meaning that it has now. Okay, completely different meaning. But I have studied the place for myself, continued Mr. Enfield. It seems scarcely a house. There's no other door, and nobody goes in or out of that one. But once in a great while, the gentleman of my adventure. There are 3 windows looking on the court on the first floor, and none below. The windows are always shut, but they're clean. And then there's a chimney, which is generally smoking. So somebody must live there. And yet, it's not so sure, for the buildings are so packed together about that court, it's hard to say where one ends and another one begins. The pair walked on again for a while in silence, and then, Enfield, said Mr. Utterson, that's a good rule of yours. I guess he's talking about questions, his rule that he likes to live by about not asking questions. Yes, I think it is, returned Enfield. But for all that, continued the lawyer, there's one point I want to ask. I want to ask the name of that man who walked over the child. Well, said Mr. Enfield, I can't see what harm it would do. It was a man by the name of Hyde. Said Mr. Utterson. What sort of man is he to see? Oh, he's not easy to describe. There's something wrong with his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. I never saw a man I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. He must be deformed somewhere. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't specify the point. He's an extraordinary looking man, and yet I really can name nothing out of the way. No, sir, I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. And it's not want of memory, for I declare I can see him this moment. Mr. Utterson again walked some way in silence, and obviously under a weight of consideration. You are sure he used a key? He inquired at last. My dear sir, began Enfield, surprised out of himself. Yes, I know, Utterson said. I know it must seem strange. The fact is, if I do not ask you the name of the other party, it is because I know it already. You see, Richard, your tale has gone home. If you have been inexact in any point, you had better correct it. I think you might have warned me, returned the other with a touch of sullenness. But I have been pedantically exact, as you call it. The fellow had a key, and what's more, he has it still. I saw him use it not a week ago. Mr. Utterson sighed deeply, but said never a word, and the young man presently resumed. Here is another lesson to say nothing, said he. I'm ashamed of my long tongue. Let us make a bargain never to refer to this again. With all my heart, said the lawyer. I shake hands on that, Richard.